But today, the people understood my message. They took what I said as truth and they voted in favor of the truth. And I feel vindicated. It is not a victory for me, it is a victory for the poor people of this country.
I will uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of St. Lucia, and that I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my responsibilities to the people of St. Lucia. So help me God.
Over in Grenada, communities are positing that government's public health enforcement during this public health emergency is not evenly applied across the board. Some also suggest that unequal enforcement of COVID protocols is also perpetuating the narrative of two Grenadas, one of the privileged and the vaccinated, who gather in significant clusters, and one of the working class and the unvaccinated, who also gather in significant clusters.
If we are so concerned about these carnival type gatherings, why is permission being given to some local promoters to have those? Okay, it is not jab, and perhaps the people who are organizing these events have...
Of the St. Lucia Reparations Commission, Dr. Bert Brathwaite of the Grenada's COVID Subcommittee, Moses Marast, Jab connoisseur, and Faye Thompson of the Grenada Movement. We thank you for joining us. A pleasant good morning to all our viewers and listeners of the Bubb Report. We thank you for joining us on this August 1st Emancipation Day edition of the program. And certainly it is indeed a pleasure to be in St. George's, Grenada, where I am actually streaming the Bubb Report from this week. I'm in Grenada for another 10 days, and it's good to get a break from North America sometimes. Certainly it is an interesting period and time to be in Grenada as well, given that we are also in the unofficial carnival season. So I would get to see what's happening on the ground on the island. But before we get into our first segment for this morning, we want to talk about and reflect on the importance and significance of emancipation. Now, in 2021, many of the problems that are faced by Grenada and the wider Caribbean certainly have their roots in the persistence of colonial era divisions that separated the Caribbean into satellites of Britain, France, Spain, the Netherlands, and other European countries. Our inability over the post-colonial period to build bridges and erase the legacy and of divisions that has left us vulnerable in a world dominated by geopolitical blocs is certainly problematic. This has been made glaringly evident in this COVID-19 pandemic period, as the region was left waiting for vaccine crumbs off the table from the more industrialized nations, and our economies continue to flail during this period. So as we reflect on emancipation, let us also reflect on ways in which we can determine that we are a truly emancipated people. And on that score, I wish to welcome my first two guests from St. Lucia, Mr. Bousquet and Mr. George. Welcome to the Bubb Report, and happy emancipation to you.
Thank you, and same to you.
Yes, indeed. And so we want to get in. I would begin with you, Mr. Bousquet, concerning emancipation. Reflecting on Emancipation 2021, where are we as a region insofar as ensuring that reparative justice and reparations can in fact become a reality?
Well, thank you for this opportunity to share my very rarely agreed with views on emancipation. I have always been of the view that emancipation was never what it was said it would have been, and it was never the freedom that it was interpreted to be. And hence I have never given credence to the August 1st holiday, preferring that we mark and observe emancipation on the date of the triumph of the Haitian Revolution, which commenced the struggle for the abolition of slavery. That being said, 225 years after the proclamation of emancipation, we still have to emancipate our minds from mental slavery, as we had been reminded by Bob Marley over 4 or 5 decades ago. And I have an article in the weekend's Voice newspaper in which I make the point, also on Caribbean News Global, in which I give the historical background to my feeling is that what happened in St. Lucia on July 26, quite apart from coinciding with the Moncada attack in Cuba in 1953, 68 years ago, that led to the triumph of the Grenada Revolution, of the Cuban Revolution later. What we had in the 26th of July 2021 was St. Lucia's second emancipation from the standpoint of the landslide given at the polls to the new ruling party in St. Lucia. And we have to see it against the standpoint that reparations and emancipation under the previous administration was very low-keyed, and therefore, while we had and still have a very active reparations committee at the regional level, at the national level, as a committee that has never been funded ever since its establishment in 2013, we have had to engage in more of the sort of networking that would allow us to take the message to the country. But remember that St. Lucia is a bilingual country where once upon a time you had more Creole speakers than English speaking, because while English is our official language, Creole is our national tongue. And therefore, one of the new challenges facing us is to be able to take the reparations message to our people in Creole. We would not like to say and boast and say we've succeeded in English, but quite a lot has to happen in terms of getting St. Lucians to understand and appreciate in the fullness of its worth the contribution of Sir Arthur Lewis to the regional reparations movement today. Because 80 years ago, or 82 years ago, in 1939, he wrote this book, Labor in the West Indies, which has been his seminal book. However, it is today the blueprint for Caribbean reparations, and the formula that he outlined back in 1939 for reparations for the British West Indies has now been adopted on Emancipation Day 2020 by CARICOM as the blueprint which is going to guide CARICOM's approach to Europe and through the European Union for reparations for slavery and native genocide. So that reparatory justice, the economic aspect of it, which was prescribed in a blueprint by Sir Arthur and which is, has lived through its time, has now been formally adopted by CARICOM. That is not much known. Certainly what I can say is that with the incoming Prime Minister of St. Lucia having honed his career at the University of the West Indies in the Black Power days, and someone who has a greater commitment to the pursuit of reparations for slavery and genocide than most local politicians, I could expect that during his term, the reparations movement in St. Lucia will not only grow at home, but St. Lucia's contribution to the reparations movement at the leadership level, at CARICOM level, I could see Philip J. Pierre turning several pages in that regard.
We will certainly watch that space. And now we will segue quickly into a conversation around, as you intimated earlier, with respect to the outcome of the election, historic outcome indeed for St. Lucia. I will bring in Mr. George. And again, I don't want to mispronounce your name. It's Calix. Is that how
Alex,
you pronounce it? Calix.
Alex, that's fine. Yeah.
All right. Very
The
well.
Calice with an X.
Yes, yeah. There you go. All right. Yes, Calix, I'll begin with you. So, um, looking at the St. Lucian elections, you work in media in St. Lucia. Would you say that the local media in St. Lucia covered the election in a manner that was fair and balanced?
Well, thanks very much for having me, Dr. Bubb,
Yes.
and of course, greetings to Earl as well. I think it was a very interesting role which the media played in the elections. And certainly I would want to go even beyond the elections. Overall, in terms of the past term of the outgoing government, the United Workers' Party government, there has been a lot of friction between the media and well, that outgoing government. And it had a lot to do with certain statements that were made, the treatment of the media. And of course, it's interesting because it was a government that was very big on social media. It was very big on its platforms of putting out its message. But in terms of actual media interactions, there were so many instances where we saw media personalities being attacked, journalists being attacked. The prime minister on many occasions said that he was ashamed of certain journalists because of the questions that were posed to him. We saw another losing MP, Mr. Guy Joseph, coming out and making statements that he would not talk to a quote unquote ex-con, who was somebody who was a journalist asking him a certain question. You saw questions just simply not being answered totally and being ignored, and journalists being sidelined. And you saw also a very deliberate attempt to pit certain or show preference towards certain media houses over others. So I think all in all, there was a lot of that friction, and to a certain extent, one saw a level of cowering on some parts of journalists, not being able to push through the difficult questions for fear of victimization or attacks. But there were some really courageous actions, and I think more than any entity out there right now, the result of the current election is largely as a result of journalism and forces within the media, persons who were doing the analysis, who were raising the issues despite it all. We saw an instance, in fact, of a talk show host, in fact, him being arrested and had to spend some time in jail because he was part in covering an event which was deemed to be illegal. It was a sort of a nationwide motorcade. So you saw a lot of this happening. And I think in all, though, there was a pretty fair and balanced approach in terms of giving all sides the opportunity to speak. But that said, the ruling party, the then ruling party, had a lot of resources, which meant that it did not even need to actually go through formal media houses. They had their own radio station and sort of allied TV station through which they pumped most of their material and their messaging.
And let us get into the tea leaves here with respect to the elections results. And Earl, I would segue back to you. This is the first time certainly in the English-speaking Caribbean where we had two independent candidates winning seats. But it was also interesting in reading those tea leaves that the Labour Party did not put up any candidates in those two constituencies, which I thought was also fascinating. But really, this is the first time. I think Grenada had a history where in 1995 we had an independent candidate who came very close to winning a constituency of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, but he was not successful. But certainly, that was a precursor to what we saw in St. Lucia. So, Earl, can you talk about the significance of that election, specific to the power of independent candidates in swaying the electorate?
We have to look at it from two angles. St. Lucians have, for the last 4 elections, including this one, demonstrated that when the public mood has changed, you get regime change. And I have been trying to get some explanation of the scenario where you have had 4 results of regime change in our last 4 elections, which means that, in my view, the St. Lucians have come up with a formula for punishing parties that don't deliver in their 5-year term. To the extent that approaching to this election, the former ruling party's campaign was, because of COVID and because our programs are so wide, we need more than 5 years. So we need a 10-year term. And I think that pushed people even more to say, well, you know, what do you take us for? Like, we can't see. There's another historic issue that is being underplayed or probably has not been fully appreciated. The Mico North seat has been, the Labour Party has never won the Mico North seat since elections, adult suffrage in 1951. That seat remained outside of the Labour Party, which is the mother and father of all parties, because it was established in 1950, and all other parties derived from members leaving. That the Labour Party won that seat for the first time after 70 years, when that seat was always won with a landslide against Labour, is a historic fact worth noting. So when we come to the 2 independent candidates, the historicity in that event is that there is in politics something that some of our panelists will probably recall, but there is something called strategic and tactical alliances that take place between political parties. And in the case of St. Lucia, for the first time in its 71-year history, the St. Lucia Labour Party did not field a complete list of candidates. It decided to field 15 of 17 out of a strategic and tactical alliance with the 2 independents. That alliance was implemented from the standpoint that the Labour Party would not send candidates in those 2 seats. That decision paid off, and while the Labour Party won 13 of the 17 seats, it can say it has 15 seats in Parliament because the 2 independent candidates are part of that strategic alliance. I've always held that it is easier to win elections than to deliver on promises.
Right.
And in the case of the 2 independent candidates, there was no proclamation by either side as to what was agreed in terms of that strategic alliance. It is expected that the 2 independent candidates, having played their role, should expect cabinet positions. It is also felt that since one of the 2 candidates is not a member of the new ruling party and has not joined, would have difficulties being members of a cabinet appointed by a party that he doesn't belong to. However, in the absence of any clarification, it is to be expected that the 2 candidates, independent candidates, will have their constituencies taken care of. And the whole question of cabinet positions is one that affects every new prime minister in terms of configuring a cabinet from what the electorate has yielded. And with 13 seats, and every person who wins an election normally expecting to be a cabinet representative, and with 2 independents also expecting cabinet posts, I wouldn't like to be in the prime minister's head at the moment. But the significance of the 2 seats, like you pointed out correctly, is that it is historical. It has not happened. I do not think it is an anomaly because it was part of a decision, a tactical and a strategic decision. As to whether the 2 independents will eventually float over to the SLP, as to whether both will be cabinet ministers, that is unknown. These are matters being negotiated at the moment. But one thing can be absolutely clear, and that is that the new administration will take care of those 2 constituencies.
Okay, and Mr. Kaliksa, we have to get to the next segment, but looking forward to the next 5 years, certainly, what would you anticipate to be some of the major issues that I know, for example, we're going into another segment here that would involve confluence of public health, emergency powers, culture, and things like that. But I know that in St. Lucia, the population was also very restive as well. And they had concerns with the state of emergency there, which I think most Caribbean countries are under because of the pandemic. So looking forward to this period, how do you think that the government will be able to handle, which is a difficult period for most Caribbean governments?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, the challenges are many. You'll find that, of course, with respect to COVID-19 and the public health issues, that's still very live, given the fact that there appears to be a lot of vaccine hesitancy in St. Lucia, even with the efforts there. So that's going to be a major issue. Pushing ahead with issues of justice. You see, within the campaign, there were a lot of concerns about how monies were being spent. A lot of money was borrowed by the past administration, and persons didn't actually quite see the benefit of that. And so we heard figures like $500 million being borrowed over the past year, but then I think only about 7 million of that actually went towards income support. There was like a $78 million support from the IMF, and much of that money just simply never got into the hands of persons and who are unemployed and businesses. And so there's a serious issue there on the economic side where persons are looking for immediate relief. That certainly will be a major concern there. As the country looks at its situation, is highly dependent on tourism, perhaps more than any other island in the OECS, barring maybe Antigua. So it's a big challenge as to how they will try to segue into new sectors of development. There's a lot of pressure on that side. You know, it's really a very ticklish situation on the fiscal end, because of the fact that you don't have as much revenue coming into the country right about now. So it is going to be very difficult, no doubt, for an incoming administration to be able to tackle those issues. We saw as well, the government, even during COVID, sort of, instead of perhaps cutting back on spending on large infrastructural projects, they went full blown ahead into a lot of extra budgetary spending on roads in particular.
Now the government may argue that that is a way to stimulate the economy. I mean,
right, but then when you look at it, I mean, when you look at the demographics of who was really affected mostly by the pandemic, which is a lot of women in particular, they weren't really going to be benefiting from the construction sector, which was like about 95% dominated by men. And it really wasn't being spread around. It was really still being given to a few selected companies that were very much aligned to the government and the ruling party. So corruption was a major issue in the past administration. And I think when you look at the result of the poll, particularly in the north of the island, and even in seats that were believed to have been impregnable, being held, for instance, by the outgoing economic development minister, Mr. Guy Joseph, he was shrouded in a number of corruption allegations. And the fact that he lost his seat, and as well the fact that in the middle class belt of Gros Islet, Barbonneau, and even Castries North, those resounding victories, and particularly in Grosley and Castries North, suggest that there was the middle class in a really big way rejected the government on the basis of corruption, and people are asking for justice in that. And as much as they're asking for bread, they're also asking for justice, and they actually want to see action being taken by the current administration in dealing with corruption and sending a very strong message towards them. I think, given the fact that the economic challenges will be difficult, and this incoming government may not be able to deliver on these massive infrastructural and large-scale type projects, they will definitely have to ensure that in terms of good governance, that there can be seen to be a return to good governance. And people are calling for things like constitutional reform. They're calling for respect of heritage. They're calling for protection of cultural assets. There have been so many issues in terms of certain developments that have been happening, even in very prized areas like our Pitos World Heritage Site. So those types of issues, in my view, will have to be the low-hanging fruit of the incoming administration, trying to tackle them to show that their governance style, first and foremost, is going to be different from what we've been seeing for the past 5 years.
Mm-hmm. All right. On that note, Mr. Bousquet and Mr. George, thank you so much for joining us for the report. I know, Mr. Earl, you are going to be part of a Grenadian panel later on emancipation. I would also be joining you on that panel on reparations, and I look forward to having further engagement with you today. Mr. George, thank you for taking time off your church service.
It's actually it's actually a Thanksgiving service it's actually a Thanksgiving service that I'm attending right now for the Prime Minister in his constituency of Castries East. And that was actually a really interesting debate, because he was being attacked from coming from a working class area in St. Lucia. And those kind of connotations were very real. And I'm raising it, of course, within the context of emancipation, because race, I think, came forward in the St. Lucia election as being an issue. Whereas you had an Alan Chasney who made statements like he's a product of Canada and his kids went to school in Canada. You then had a gentleman like Philip J. Pierre, who was being criticized for not being well-traveled enough. And so you saw those
for having a stutter, right?
Or for having a stutter, but the connotations there are not, and as well, even coming from a statement from a long-standing Black Power activist who was also in politics before, Mr. Peter Josie, that people in St. Lucia preferred people of a Kule Waiai, and that translates to persons, mulattoes sort of, and so that sort of debate was.
Yeah,
and that was very live in this current politics right here in St. Lucia. So his victory is certainly a statement of rejection of that type of neocolonialistic outlook, and I think it's fairly significant in terms of the direction of the country towards embracing its heritage.
And likewise, I'm also thankful for having been part of your panel today, and I will try to listen and follow. And I want to give special greetings to my lost friend for the past 25 years, Wendy Crawford. Have a nice day.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Hi,
Say
Earl.
hi, Wendy.
Good to see you, Earl.
Good to see you. We'll stay in touch.
Right.
Kellen will give me the address.
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, folks, stand by. We will get to a quick commentary on emancipation that I compiled last year, and we will come back with our public health, culture, and jab segment. Stand by. The starting point would be August 1st, 1834. It was the date in which the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833 took effect in most British colonies, freeing the more than 800,000 enslaved Africans in Grenada and in other Caribbean countries, as well as in Canada and South Africa, respectively. While the Africans were granted their manumission or freedom papers, their white owners were compensated for each kidnapped and enslaved African under the Slave Compensation Act of 1837, which was required by British law. In the case of Grenada, a total of 570,733 pounds were paid to the slave-owning planter class for the 19,009 slaves held on the island at the time of emancipation. After adjusting this amount using Britain's Office for National Statistics CPI calculator, this amounts to 64,320,103.76 pounds in 2020, or put another way, 214,709,939 East Caribbean dollars. So while the African descendants continue to live with the intergenerational trauma of slavery, and while some in the respectability politics class in the Caribbean rubbish the idea of reparations, the European descendants continue to benefit from the spoils of emancipation and slavery. The list of beneficiaries is long. The Church of England, the Bank of England, Barclays Bank PLC, HSBC, Lloyds of London, Glasgow University, the Royal Bank of Scotland, and Smith, Payne and Smith Bank. So Hilary Beckles said in 2016, quote, "Reparation is not just an issue of repaying the enormous debts owed to the descendants of enslaved Africans. Reparation is part and parcel of the global movements for racial justice, for social justice and economic justice. It occupies a crucial space in the movement against growing income and wealth inequalities in the world," unquote. And welcome back, folks. I'm happy to be joined for the panel segment, our second panel segment of the morning. We will be discussing the tensions, the inherent tensions that exist between protecting public health and also having a little fun around this time of year during the Carnival period. Certainly, we do not have an official Carnival, but if you visit any community in Grenada from the north of the island to the south of the island, you would find that folks are gathering. But of course, the backdrop is that we are still in a public health emergency. And so I want to bring in the panel and welcome everyone. Dr. Burt Brathwaite of the COVID-19 Committee in St. George's, Moses Marast, and Wendy Crawford, who is a sociologist. And so we really want to have a deeper conversation around these discussions that were happening since last year, because the conversations around what the jabs are doing in the communities against the backdrop of COVID-19 is not something that started this year. And so, Dr. Brathwaite, I want to begin with you. As part of the COVID committee, I know that you are, coming from a medical lens, that you are concerned, and the COVID committee is concerned with respect to the new Delta variant and the significance of that Delta variant. So could you give us an update as to what the COVID committee's sort of adjusted response would be for managing that potential variant if it were to ever make its way to Grenada?
Good morning to you, Dr. Bubb, and to your to the panelists and to all your listeners and viewers. First of all, you said if the Delta variant were to reach us here. The first thing I would like to establish is that at some point in time, one cannot say exactly when, the COVID virus will reach just about every person in existence from what we see is happening presently. And that is something that I hope we will ultimately be able to get people to understand. There's no hiding from it. What makes matters worse is that the news of this week, which was that the Delta variant is behaving quite abnormally, as one of the leading scientists has put it. And you can sense the alarm. You would have heard the reaction of the CDC, etc. And it all points to some very dangerous signals. At this point, I was hoping that we would have been out of the woods with respect to COVID and very much on the pathway to normality. And let me say, I fully understand people's desire to get out there, and the importance of culture and the importance of jab and carnival activities, etc. These are all critical parts of the social fabric of the society. However, people need to stop, pause, and listen carefully to what not only the scientists are saying, but what is being said internationally about this, the Delta variant and COVID in general, because the other strains, BVI was just devastated by a strain which I gather may not have been the Delta strain. I'm not absolutely sure. But whether it was or not, it's been devastated. And other Caribbean islands continue to have serious problems. We are not in any way going to be privileged against a similar fate, or worse fate for that matter, in the sense that we have horribly low vaccination levels. It might have been okay to be, indeed, in fact, the government has supported activities that are fully vaccinated activities, and there was one such activity yesterday. But when if people take it upon themselves to go into activities, they do it recognizing there's high risk, because the Delta strain especially is far more transmissible than it was before. You're hearing stories of it being much more contagious, The only virus that is commonly known that is probably more contagious than that still is measles. It's more contagious than MERS and SARS and smallpox and polio, and as contagious as chickenpox, and is likely to be more severe as well. And the breakthrough, you're getting breakthrough infections with in individuals who are even vaccinated. So I will go into more about it, but whilst we were hoping that we would be rounding the clock, we are in a very, very dangerous position. Let me just say this from the outset. Those who advocate and support people going out and fetting en masse, they are promoting a very dangerous activity, a highly hazardous activity. And I hope that organizations, thinking organizations of all types, will stand up firmly and reject such calls, because it is highly dangerous. And if I will also go in, if we have the opportunity, to give folk a feel, I hope, of what will happen if COVID sweeps this island, which is quite likely, despite our best efforts.
Yes, Dr. Brathwaite, I would stick a pin there, but let me bring in the other two panelists here, Jab Moses and Wendy Crawford. I mean, you've heard what Dr. Brathwaite said. This is a question here of protecting public health. Do you think that there is an unreasonableness to central government's approach to this, or do you feel as if the enforcement of COVID protocols was unevenly enforced? One of you can jump in. Either one wants to go first.
Jump in. I could jump. I have so much to say. But,
yes, please go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Brathwaite. Good seeing you. Jab. Not sharing a panel with you guys. Yes, I understand that the government has a responsibility to protect the citizen, but I also understand that that responsibility is not a unilateral decision. And I have looked at the approach, for example, of the Barbados Prime Minister with regards to consultation with the population with regards to the best approaches. And I think while there are genuine concern for the health of our people, while there are genuine concern for our protection, there are a number of things that we have to remember. And the first one is this. When I'm making this point to sort of make the point that sometimes we take wholeheartedly other person's situation and impose it on ourselves as our own. We buy into things that sometimes while it is important to be cautious, we have to think about some things. When COVID started, in the very early period of COVID, I was extremely proud of Grenada government and Grenada authority in the approach that was taken. And I was even more proud of Grenadian people because we responded. We respected the measures put in place. We social distance, we wore our masks, we stayed indoors for weeks on months for some of us, without even looking outside. We followed everything. While in other societies, in North America, in some of the Caribbean islands, none of that was done. Someone from another island sent me a long list of people line up in distances, following the 6 feet or 3 feet distance in terms of the
6 feet,
protocol.
yes.
6 feet. So, and what is going on in Grenada? Because the supermarket line went around and around and around. What is going on in Grenada? You guys have become Cuba, but we were following the directives as outlined by our public health experts, by our government. I was extremely proud of the police because, of course, in any society, there'll be some people that will, be defiant. The police, what did they do? They did not get angry. They sometimes took people home. They even gave them a ride home. They spoke to people, and encouraged people to do the right things. So we became the beneficiary of our really good behavior at the start of the pandemic. We followed all the rules. We did everything that was right. And we became the beneficiary. We could say no death because the person who died wasn't even...
That was an imported case.
That was an imported case. And all the cases that we had were imported cases, and they were dealt with in the proper way. The government had instituted a really strict quarantine situation. I mean, they just followed everything to a T. I was extremely proud. Then I began to get very disappointed when the issue of the vaccine came up. Now, to me, I'm a sociologist, and culture is a very important thing for me. So, and as you know, culture goes deeper than what we see and what we hear. Culture goes much deeper because it is the intangible thing, the value system that we have, the things that we believe in, and the policymakers who, while saying the vaccine is not mandatory, for example, I heard the Prime Minister saying, well, nobody could force you to take the vaccine is not mandatory, etc., etc. Yet, what was done is the authority was handed over to employers, and they were told, you do not have to accept people into your workplace if they are not vaccinated. No, it is totally ignoring that deep cultural value that people have. Remember, we're coming out of a history where we have a very dual approach to everything. That dual approach goes way back from the dual approach with regards to our healthcare. We have informal medicine and formal medicine. And the average Grenadian practice informal medicine. We believe, because it has been handed down to us over generations, the importance of our herbs. And when we have a cold, we don't run to the doctor. We always self-treat first with every possible remedy that was handed down to us from generation to generation. We have, while the rest of the world was suffering because of their disobedience to some sort of rules, and we were following those rules, we are being punished now and said that you must take the vaccine if you want to maintain your job. You must take the vaccine if you have to feed your children. And when you touch people's children and providing for your children is a totally different question. So coming out of all of this sort of situation where we practice a dual informal and a formal medicine, the average Grenadian will treat themselves before they go to the formal medicine. We practice it in our religion. Many of our people believe in our local scientists, which we sometimes call Obia man or Obia woman or prayer warrior. Or we go to pray. We go to our people to give us a bath, to give us some time.
A bush bath. I've taken a few of those.
And no matter who you are in Grenada, how educated, it is part of our culture. Through the generations, we have learned and have incorporated, and it is in us, that sort of understanding and value system. So people while they are gonna go to church, we are very spiritual people, and your culture is your spirituality, your belief system, your philosophy. So where is the opportunity given to Grenadians to take into consideration all of these possibilities? So formal medicine, which has never really been our main response to our variety of illnesses we have here. There are a lot of people in our society, in our community, who believe that every illness that we experience here in Grenada, there is a herb out there that can take care of it. There are people in the strong philosophical belief, right? And so when the approach is to bulldoze and to hammer and to force and to push, what you'll get resistance. And it is like a slippery slope. It has started then. We had the best opportunity to take the best approach. And I listened.
All right, yes, let me bring in, you wanted to make one final point before I bring in Mr. Maras,
Yes,
and then I'll get back
yes,
to
sure.
Dr.
I was
Brathwaite.
saying
Yes.
we had the best opportunity to avoid a slippery slope, right? At that point, and since that vaccine thing, and now comes that Carnival thing, we have that slippery slope that we're going down into. Although it's not too late to arrest the situation, and maybe I have some ideas, or we could arrest it, I'm sure, or my jab colleague also has some suggestions.
Well, but we should also not dismiss those public health suggestions as well, which I think
Certainly
is
not.
also important, because we have to be able to protect lives and livelihoods. Jab Moses, last year was the same thing. The same thing we saw last year. We're seeing it again this year again. But I think it is much more pronounced. So why are you behaving so bad?
Well, to be honest with you, I feel like it's a different year. Last year was the introduction to COVID. Grenadian people on a whole, because of what we were seeing out there in the mainstream media in the first world countries, North America, England, etc. So obviously the fear that was instilled from mainstream media circumvented in Grenada, and people were very concerned for the health of Grenadian people, and the fact that our health system in Grenada is in shambles. Right? So people were very concerned, and they took it very serious, stayed home and followed the protocols of the government. But this year, there's so much red flags and things that have happened, things that the government is requesting from us as Grenadian people that is alarming and probably detrimental to our health as Grenadian people. First and
what
foremost,
things are you talking about when you say the thing? Can you specify what things
I'm talking about the vaccine mandate, especially the vaccine mandate for this AstraZeneca vaccine that's in trial phase is not being distributed to the North American population, but is being distributed to the third world countries who cannot afford.
But it's also but no, Moses, I'm going to push back. It's also used in Europe as well. So it's not only and it's not a mandate in Grenada. I will fact check you on that. It is not a state mandate. But what I want to get to, just you saying that this year is different. The jab defiance. We've seen the jab defiance in several communities, in Willis and in other parts of the country, and so on and so forth. Do you think that is just a reaction to what you claim to be sort of a pressure
Yes.
that comes down on them?
Okay, so my explanation to that is, to me, it seems as though it's a betrayal from the government and a betrayal from the Ministry of Culture and Spice Mass and the authorities in Grenada. Because I know, Mr. Bubb, that you've been watching everything that's been going on in Grenada. But for the last 3 years or 4 years, Grenada has used the jab revelers as the forefront or the product to sell Grenada's carnival and to sell Grenada's culture, right? And then this year, the state or the government has basically banned or criminalized jab. Remember, emancipation is a reflection of the same oppression our ancestors endured and fought for. But it seems as though we are getting a new age type of oppression. I feel as though the same people that were bringing 20-something thousand people to Grenada for carnival-like activities and contributing to the economy are put on the backbench and are being disrespected to a certain extent. This is just my innate feeling inside and what I'm feeling on the ground and what people are saying, what the Grenadian people are saying. The removal of the Carnival Monday and Tuesday activities, whereas they're giving preference to only vaccinated people, is creating division in the country and circumventing people who are going to just defy the law. And people who are literally going to say, well, hey, look, emancipation, look, all the things that we fought for. And you mean to say you're going to take away those critical days that give us that strength, that open air to actually say what's the problems that we are having in the country. Every carnival time, this is what we do with Old Mass, with Jab Jab. It's a portrayal of the stress and the troubles and the tribulation that the people are going through. So yes, some people might be of the opinion that, oh, the Jab Jab only want to drink rum, have fun on the road, etc. But it's much more deeper. So I really feel that to a certain extent, it's a betrayal from a government to our culture and to the Grenadian people.
Okay, I'm going to bring back Dr. Brathwaite here. A lot has been said. But Dr. Brathwaite, I want you to answer an audience question. I see you smiling there. But the gentleman says, or lady, I don't know, that seems to be a pseudonym. Tell me, Dr. Brathwaite, how do you square this peg in the round hole when the government is granting permission for certain influencers in society to hold and promote certain events while the common man is prohibited? And I also think the backdrop as well is, okay, well, you're having these events for vaccinated people, but also churches, they to me, at least I've been watching several funerals, and again, this is anecdotal evidence. Social distancing is not necessarily maintained in a lot of church services these days. So the question is, where is the enforcement there as well? So Dr. Brathwaite?
Yeah. Well, let me deal with that first. The question of enforcement is obviously a difficult one, and the government has been very appreciative of the reaction, as Dr. Garfield pointed out, of people in the last year with respect to not going out and reveling, etc., and following the guidelines. So because no government anywhere, and I don't think it would be, I can't speak for the government, but I would very much doubt, from my knowledge of the government here, that they would attempt to stop people en masse from doing something. And what they will continue to do, I would suspect, is to tell people, look, this is dangerous for you. This is dangerous for you. But people decide en masse to go and have fetes all around, many spots in the country. The police have the RGPS has its normal duties to perform, the normal crimes that go on, and they cannot police every single situation. We have tried to develop a system where we have environmental wardens, etc., but they have been caught up largely with matters relating to people in quarantine, etc. And so, one has left it a lot to people's good sense and enough information has been put out there for them to follow the guidelines that have been set. But let me get to some critical points that have been raised. First of all, at no time, let me say to I'm not sure if I should call her Wendy or Dr. Crawford, whichever.
Wendy's fine. Wendy's fine.
Right, Wendy. You can call me Bert, right? I want you to think on this. Over 95% of the population in Grenada gets full immunization coverage for a range of viral infections, from measles, which is one of the most infectious, measles, mumps, rubella, diphtheria, tetanus, the whole works. And we have one of the highest, like most other Caribbean countries, one of the highest vaccination levels. It is this level of vaccination in the young people that has got many people to be able to go to adulthood without congenital heart problems, without limb deformities, without retardation, deafness, blindness, and without having come pretty close to death. So this has been the policy of government. Vaccination started in earnest somewhere in the 60s or therearound from WHO guidelines, and it has cut down childhood illnesses significantly. Now, this is the first time that in the adult population en masse, it has to be recommended, but it is the same type of vaccination process, and is indeed, and in fact, this vaccine has now been given to so many millions of people that we know that it is indeed, in fact, notwithstanding some cultural relationships here and there, it is an extreme, all the vaccines that the vaccine that we have had access to is an extremely safe vaccine. People,
yes, but Dr. Brathwaite, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you here, but there is also nuance with respect to the effects of the vaccine as well. Yeah. So, and I think that there has to be. Let me finish, please. I think there has to also be informed consent. Everyone has a unique set of medical circumstances, and I think that also must be given consideration too. Would you agree with that?
And you know what, Dr. Bubb? The more unique and the iller and the more underlying conditions you have, the quicker you need to get. I know of a person or one or two people who are asthmatics, and I have in some cases I've been able to encourage them to go up. And I said to them, look, you should have been the first ones to get the vaccine. People are saying, and we tell people this, but it has registered with some, others it hasn't registered with, that people with underlying conditions are more at risk. What we need to do, you know what I want the public to do? I want the public to just tune into any one of the cable stations, probably with the exception of Fox, in the United States now, and hear the testimonials and the pleas of people who are on the dying bed, many of whom had no underlying conditions, all young people. Let's look here in the BVI. In the BVI, two weekends ago, 3 people I know, not that I know, I heard of, under 50 were gone in a place with a small population of 30,000. So vaccines, the vaccination process, if we do not, anyone who does, I would go as far as to say this, anyone who does not get the vaccine will be, because especially of the transmissibility of the new variants, is going to be exposed to that virus at some time. Now, they may be lucky and come out with just a horrible sickness, or there may even be, actually the percentage of people who are not getting symptoms are almost certainly going to be much, much less. Then you have to contend with a whole range of things. You have to contend with what they call the long COVID symptoms, which I don't think we will even have time to go in with here, which causes some cognitive problems, etc., in about 1/3 of the people who get it. And this is nothing to do with people who get sick and required to go to hospital and may find themselves in ICU. And so for many reasons, yes, Wendy, I understand the feelings of people. If you have the common cold and you want to take some Bastille, I have no problems with that. But if you want to protect yourself against COVID, the only way, and certainly the best way to protect yourself against COVID is by taking the vaccine. And AstraZeneca, by the way, Mr. Moses, it is now being proven, there's strong suggestion, and we probably will hear a lot more about this, that in terms of long-term coverage, perhaps it may be, but because of the way it is formulated, which is different from the mRNA vaccines, that's the Pfizer and the Moderna, may be allowing people to have better long-term coverage than the mRNA vaccines. It's the early studies, but they're certainly very suggestive. So a multitude of reasons. And Wendy, going back to you mentioned the government initially didn't force anything. But I think it is a strong responsibility on the part of government, on the part of those in public health, to get up and say to people, look, nobody wants to have a shot and a vaccine, but to have explored, and we went with the WHO guidance. We have not given any vaccine, but the only vaccine we have available is AstraZeneca. Only after it was approved by WHO, it's approved in many other countries around the world. And without vaccines, this pandemic, we are still, to go back to Mr. Moraes, we are still in the midst of a pandemic. Yes, last year this was called upon to be done, but as I said in my opening comments, look at the evidence that has come out just this week that the situation has taken a turn for the worse. And these are not words of Bert Braffin. These are the words of leading scientists. And I invite people, you don't necessarily always listen to us. Go and listen to the folk from CDC, and other parts of the world, from the Canadian Public Health Agency, from the British Public Health Agency. Go and listen to these people and what they have to say about this disease. It is a serious, this is the most threatening public health problem that this country has faced probably since I'm not sure what the 1918 pandemic, the effect was on us, but certainly
the Spanish flu. Yeah, I don't think it did, because at that time we didn't have that.
Right, we did not have that level of
Europe and North America. Yes, Dr. Bradford, but stick a pin. You've said a lot. I want to give both Jab Moses and Wendy a chance to respond. So, Dr. Crawford, I'll start with you.
Is it Moses or Moraes? Is it Mr. Moses or Mr. Moraes?
Jab Moses.
Okay, sorry.
But you're preaching to the converted, because I am sure the average Grenadian understand the seriousness and see the dangers of COVID and understand it. Remember, every Grenadian have right at their fingertip access to information. You don't get good information, bad information, but we have access to information. So I'm not denying that it is not a very serious, it's a pandemic. It must be serious. It takes life. It took a lot of lives. What I'm saying is our approach to the population. It feels like people are bulldozed into without being informed. We both are coming out of a medical institution that has insisted that every worker, every employee, every staff member, every faculty, every visitor are required to be vaccinated to come on the compound, right? So they have established a policy. People understand and know how serious the whole thing is, but the approach, both the bulldozing of people without information. We speak from the medical point of view about informed consent, and the right to privacy and the right to decision making, and we have a right to decide what goes into our body and what do not go into our body. Allow people the time to get the information, to convince them, rather than setting deadline. This must be done by the 15th. This must be done by the 30th. This must be done by the 1st. Allow people the time. We normally take time. We are a rational thinking being. And from the moment you feel as if you are forced into a situation and your back is against the wall, people will resist. People will, and I'm glad this is happening on August the 1st, Emancipation Day, because that is what the whole essence of JAB was all about. And if we go back historically, and we saw what the experience of the enslaved people and the perception of the enslaved people by the colonialists, by the white colonialists, was that black people are the devil, they are evil, they are cruel, they are capable of any heinous crime you can think about. And how did the black enslaved people use that perception? It is manifested through this thing that we call today jab. They say, well, you haven't seen bad yet. You haven't seen evil yet. They put soot on their body to be even blacker. So the blacker, the better. If it's violence you want, we are not backing down. So when you take those types of approaches, you will always find people will resist. And that is why I'm saying, I can understand the argument of the public health in the sense we have to be careful, but we have a history of jab, and if not going back too far away in our history, when Gary said no jab that year, everybody, even I as a child, played jab. And you know what was the beauty of it? The chant. So jab do not need big truck with DJ and all that thing. Jab had a history of orderly conveying the messages. They would look at what they did in St. Paul's last year. Single file, maintain social distance, use the chain to order the participants in a particular way, and it was as safe as ever. So not only jab, if you think about the other traditional masks, they wear masks automatically already. So maybe we need to meet each other halfway.
Yes, and Dr. Crawford, Leo Lenny Edwards is saying the same thing you're saying. We need balance, right? We need balance.
We need that to meet each other halfway. At the start, the authority said we're going to give some carnival-like activities. How has that carnival-like activities translated? It has been translated into activities of those who can afford. No, jab, you don't have to. All you need is some drummer oil.
Sort of a more organic type,
more the people type of thing. So here is an opportunity to allow people in their community to consult with there's a jab king in every community, one who organizes. Consult with them, lay down some sort of policy where you could say, listen, this is how it's going to be. You maintain your distance. You don't need any music because you already have your drum, your horn, and all the things that your chain, things that make, and your chant. You have that. That is could be done. The community should be allowed to do that. So I thought, and it still isn't too late, that at least the government will say, okay, the so-called Carnival Monday, we set that aside. We know St. David's and St. Patrick's normally have theirs on Tuesday morning, but you could say we set aside Monday for jabs in all the communities who want to play short knee, jab, beko, whatever traditional mass you want to play. Go ahead and do your thing, but do it in an orderly fashion. Do it in a way that would not put our health at risk, because you as an individual making a decision whether you want to play or not. Am I willing to put my culture, about my heritage over my health? It's your decision. So you make that decision, but you do not carte blanche say no carnival. Yeah, there are carnival-like activities taking place for those who could afford to pay the big money to participate, and the average man cannot.
Yeah, the public health argument is that, the science of vaccination says that, if you have a certain herd immunity and things like that, the chances of transmission are reduced.
Yes, Helen, but remember, we have 20% of people vaccinated. 20% of our people vaccinated. Out of that 20%, what number of persons normally do any activities at all? Let's say 5,000, which is not a thing, who really participate. Because when you look at Grenada, the people who go to fed, to party, to activities, it's the same persons that you see over and over. So we do not have 20% of our population who will go out there and take part in any activity. Let's say 5%. You have 5%. And the vaccine is so new. Every day we're hearing something new about it. Now we're learning, even if you are vaccinated, you can still catch the virus and you can still transmit the virus. That you have the unvaccinated people saying their health is at risk when they interact with vaccinated persons. You're hearing all kinds of different things. I mean, we are hearing different things being said out there, right? And so it is so new, the newness of it. Bert spoke about the vaccine. Yes, of course, we all were vaccinated for all childhood diseases. At that time, we don't know how much of it was experimental or not, but it worked. At that time, we didn't have the internet. At that time, all of us didn't have a phone in our hand where we could access information from all about. Now we can do it. Now we have access to information.
Correct, but Dr. Crawford, I would push back as a communication scholar. Not all information is qualitatively accurate.
Certainly.
You would certainly agree with that, yes? And
I agree
also,
100%.
we need to have the ability to be nuanced and discreet.
I agree with that.
You know, well, not discreet, but we need to have discretion with
Exactly.
how we pass the information we receive as well.
Exactly. And
Yes.
that is what I'm saying. The approach in passing that information is the incorrect one, I must admit. The approach is one of using scare tactics, of treating people as if they do not have sense, telling them they're falling for fake news. We have an obligation to read all news, whether it is fake or non-fake. And I believe in reading everything to get various perspectives on things. So we are too quick and impatient to jump on people and call them illiterate or ignorant or not falling for fake news, etc. Of course, there are tons of fake news out there. So we can develop, and we depend on some of the authority to help us pull out what is scientifically so and what is not. But is the approach, Kellan, it just is too much. And it's not taking into consideration our people. It's not taking into consideration how our people think. And right now, as you earlier said, Grenada is as like a pressure cooker. Things steaming. Everybody looking and waiting to see what is going to happen Carnival Monday. And so this is where I think this is where the authorities could step in and say, let's sort of diffuse that situation. Right?
Okay. We have to come up for air, panel. Yes, we have to come up for air. We have to get to the next segment. But what we want to do...
No, before you leave, I just want
to
give you this thought. And I'm sorry we didn't have more time to expand on the concept. So
I'm sorry. We Dr. Brathwaite, stick a pin. We will be taking a break. We're not going to get to the next segment as yet. But let us take a break, and I will come up for air. We're going to come up for air. We'll get some water really quickly, and then we're going to get back. All right? We're going to get back. Panel, stay with us.
So it's not a legal schooling. I know you're sensitive to people schooling you on the law, but I think I can trump you when it comes to the history of Grenada.
What you're saying is that this resignation was expected? Would it be fair to say that you abdicated your responsibility by not showing up in Parliament on Friday?
We are not aware of the terms of the agreement.
But then how can you say the terms are not fair? Don't know the terms.
We love old talk, we love gossip, we love brango, we love all them kind of things in the Caribbean.
If I cannot play music, I don't know how I'm going to live.
We are borrowing money to pay debt because of corruption, waste, and mismanagement.
That they have difficulty with your leadership. Why then are you contesting the presidency? All right, panel, welcome back. Dr. Brathwaite, I will give you a chance to respond, and I also get Jab Moses to respond in. Yes, Dr. Brathwaite, please.
First of all, to tell Wendy, I don't agree with her. The only time government has mandated anything today is with respect to workers in the hotel sector, those in quarantine facilities, those in the airport, those working at the centers. It said to them, look, if you want to continue to do the job in these very, very high-risk areas, you need to be vaccinated. Government has strongly encouraged daily. I myself preach to people and beg people to go there, beseech them to go there and get the vaccine, because this is what's going to happen. If we continue with the present level of vaccine coverage in this country, here's what is more likely not going to happen. We're going to get a severe outbreak. And when it happens in the hospital services, unfortunately, a significant percentage of our people, our hospital workers, are not vaccinated. They, like everybody else, will be exposed and they will get ill. They will be off the jobs. The numbers of people coming in, depending on the strain, could rise very significantly. We have limited hospital beds, and no time you will find patients in the corridor. And we may even have to go and find facilities beyond the hospital to house patients. It is going to go further than that. It's going to, the vaccination, people will start to rush for vaccinations. There will not be, a lot of your staff is going to be taking up contact tracing and also contact tracing for individuals and also swabbing individuals. So they are not going to be there to get vaccines. And I will make a prediction that, like in many other countries, if we get or when we get an outbreak on the basis of our present vaccination levels, when we get an outbreak on that basis, the lines will curl. The lines, if they're holding them in stadium, they might reach Melville Street, with people rushing to try to get vaccines when they see what is happening. I don't understand how we can feel that we've seen it in other Caribbean countries. Trinidad still continues to have an average probably of about 8 or so people dying every day. At one stage, they had a person dying every hour about 2 months ago. They have not been able to completely control it in terms of the number of cases they're picking up and deaths. Similar happening in Jamaica, and on. And we have not seen the worst strain has not reached us to the best of our knowledge, but it could be on our doorstep at any time. Hence, why the call is not about if you are involved in it is, first of all, when the government has not gone out and pushed back. Look, in terms of what happened at Cowpen, the folk going to Cowpen are not usually the well-to-do, by and large, the well-to-do folk. And there were hundreds of people there last weekend. No, it was illegal, and I believe it's been brought before the courts. But people were there. People are assembling all around the place against the provisions and the regulations. And the RGPF is just trying to control the affair because they know what the regulations state. So there's not been that the state has gone out there and tried to, as it were, manners people per se. But the government has done the responsible thing and said, look, this is dangerous for you. Don't do it. We have to try to pull back on it. We know we have limited resources here and limited personnel here. Are we going to wait until this thing unleashes on the whole country? And what we actually need as a country, we need civil society to there are very many widely read people come out and stand up and go there forcefully and fight for this country to protect it, like every other country is going to need it. This pandemic is not over, regrettably. I was hoping we would have been on the back end of the curve. It is not, and it's left to us. It's left to us. Either we accept science. Look at what's happening in the United States now. Suddenly, the vaccination levels have gone up significantly. People who were swearing that they weren't going to take vaccines, and especially in many of the southern states. Why have they gone to do it? Because they see people dropping down and dying. Do we want that to happen here? It's our choice.
Mm-hmm. It's our choice. Operative word there. Let me bring in Jab Moses for some closing comments from you, brother.
Yes.
Are you in Grenada at the moment? Or
I am.
where are you?
I am in Grenada at the moment. I'm in
You
Grenada.
are in Grenada, so you're in Grenada. So what are we going to be seeing this weekend? Are they going to be jab? Or you don't want to snitch? I know you may not want to let the police officers know of your intentions, and I don't want you to get in trouble either. But
Exactly.
but seriously, what would you propose as a good middle ground for what some might consider to be an impasse between government and citizens, especially those who like the jab?
We need to have discussions. We need to sit down. We need to have representatives, people who understand the situation that we're going into and that we're in, and also people that can have a proper conversation. At this present time, I don't feel like the government is really having a conversation with the people who are involved in culture, with the people who have been playing jab for many, many years. What I think is going on is that it feels somewhat like a dictatorship. The government is just pouring down rules and regulations towards the people without having consultation, without knowing exactly what's happening on the ground. So my point is that there is a special preference given to the vaccinated people to have their carnival-like activities. And this happened in 2020 as well too. And I had came out on national television and said that, look, if you're going to have carnival-like activities while you are saying no jab on the road, but you're having Spice Mass was having a collaboration with Judah where they had the Soca Mona. And this event that they had created circumvented tension in the country and caused a lot of people to go out on the road. They were saying, well, okay, you said that we're in a pandemic, you're having a carnival-like activity, you're bringing the revelers on stage to portray jab and to portray a lot of different things, and you're pushing that narrative on the television. So people are like, if you're allowed to jump up and play jab in the stadium where I was, Kellan, personally, I was on the stage with Dash and another artist. If you're allowing us to have that carnival-like activity, but you're doing it, you're streaming it online, what are you really portraying to the Grenadian people? What are you telling them? You understand where I'm coming from? So people took that as a betrayal, you know, to our culture, and people went out on the road. And I would also like to say, I feel to a certain extent, a lot of people have been victimized, Kellan. A lot of people, the people who want to talk about the culture, the people who want to talk about how we are impacted have been victimized through social media, and they don't really have that air or that spot where they can talk about things. I want to commend Kem Jones. He's been doing investigative journalism. I think we need more of that in Grenada. We need more people discussing.
I would push back there. Kem Jones is not a journalist.
But I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Exception to that. Please proceed.
Right. But I'm just saying what I'm saying is that
I get your point. Go ahead. Yeah.
There's some ongoing things that we need to have discussions about. And it won't just happen overnight. And we can't just sit back and allow the government to dictate how we live our lives. Remember, Kellan, since 2020, March, we've been stuck at home, right? We don't have COVID in this island. COVID is imported in this island. The hotels in the Granans area and throughout the island do not have capacity. Some hotels, like Silver Sands, only have 2 people in the hotel. So the people are saying this cultural activity that we have for 2 days on the road, why not shut down incoming traffic to Grenada and give the people a time to express themselves, to talk about what they are seeing on the ground, the pressures and the things that they've been going through. This is very, very important that us as a people get to express ourselves because of what emancipation means to us. Remember, it's a reflection of our oppression. And if we cannot reflect and portray, then it's just going to create tension and anger towards the government and towards our leaders. So at this point in time, people, I believe, and this is what I'm hearing on the street, Kellan, people are angry at our leadership. They are saying that we have failed leadership at the moment. The decisions that they're making is failed. They are not talking to the citizens of Grenada to understand what's happening. That's just my point, right?
And I see somebody's agreeing with you there. And Sue Patrice also has a suggestion, Moses, which you might agree with. She's saying it's only a few hundred per village, free up for 4 hours, organize chants and drums. I mean, you know, something
I agree.
like that.
I agree with that.
So here is the deal. Would you be willing to meet with, first of all, is there a job association that I should be aware of?
So there is, well, they have been saying that there's a job association, and since last year, people have been
putting. But you're known as King Jab, so
yeah. But you see, no, it's technical. It's technical,
okay,
right? But there's, from my knowing, there is Slum who has basically a business, registered business called Jab. I forgot the name, but anyways, Slum is one of the original people who have basically been playing jab and been representing for the culture, and he works along with Spice Mass and the government. He's being paid by Spice Mass. But what I'm saying is that we don't actually have a collaborative thing where we are having discussions. The people who, so remember, is it Miss Crawford was making a point that
yes,
there are leaders in each village and in each parish who orchestrate and organize jab-like activities. And if the government or the people in the Ministry of Culture and Health cannot come together and give direction or give a sense of hope that these people can be able to portray and enjoy and reflect on emancipation, then it's just going to circumvent the people going out Monday and Tuesday as a protest. But what's going on is they're making it dangerous, Kellan, because for the last 2 weeks, they've been picking up jab revelers in different villages. But how they're doing it is that they're waiting for you to play the jab. They are tape recording. So whoever is tape recording you, they are looking at the footage. They are finding out the information, when and where you had the activities. They are picking up people the following morning or 2 days after, and they are charging them. Based on what I heard that they kicked off some of the cases in Grenville. But I'm saying, I feel to a certain extent, they are using this emergency powers to victimize people who just want to celebrate our emancipation. And this is very dangerous. I feel like we're going down a dangerous route where we're just going to have a clash between the police officers. It's not government anymore. It's just going to be police officers against revelers. And this is what happened last year in Surtees. And honestly, everybody went up to Surtees and Guave, and the police had no control, because when you have thousands of people coming down in the town and basically angry and looking out for some kind of interaction, it just creates a very dangerous situation and atmosphere in Grenada. But we really need to have that discussion, as I was saying previously. It all starts from having a discussion. It cannot continue to just be dictated what we do and how we do. We are a loving nation, you understand, and we need hope and we need betterment for this country. But obviously, the leadership at this point in time is not giving that to us.
All right, Mr. Maras, thank you. And Wendy, I'm going to get to you for some final summations. And again, I wish to thank the panel. I know it's Sunday. It's a holiday weekend. It's your lunch hour. So I thank all of you for agreeing to appear on the program. Again, we always strive to hear from all sides. That is important. So Dr. Crawford, let's hear from you.
Kellan, I just want to say that I'm sure it is evident that JAB is going to play. And while law enforcement, I know, have a legal duty to follow orders, but also they can refuse to follow illegal or immoral orders. Remember, law enforcement came from the community. That's our brothers, sisters, uncle, dad, best friend, husband, wife, etc. And again, as John Moses said, consultation. That is the answer, because JAB is going to play. So should we anticipate that there's going to be confrontation, or should we try to appease the situation by meeting with and coming up with some specific regulations that both sides can follow? Because I am sure that the brothers and sisters and the uncles and so who are in law enforcement will do no harm to their relative who will be out there playing. Mothers will not be, will not sit back idly and see their children being brutalized. So we have to avoid situations when we see there is a possibility. We know JAB is going to play. That is in our blood, our system. It is going to play. So let us play in a safe way, thinking about the COVID situation. We all have fears about this COVID situation. We do not want to get COVID, but people are going to play. They're going to play their job. They're going to play their short knee. They're going to play their vehicle. So let us anticipate the possible problem that can arise by calling leaders from the various communities together, consult, and let's come together and do something that we all can live by, right? People need a vent. People have been bogged down for a long time. They just need a little vent. A lot of issues going on in the country. They want to just let people make the chant and blow the drum and that stop themselves and do what you have to do. It's not so difficult, and it's not too late. It's certainly not too late, right? And a responsible authority or government would say, you know, we may we kind of make a mistake how we approach it in the beginning. So let's wipe our slate clean and start again. Guys, come to the table. Let's discuss this. Let's see how we could resolve this thing. To me, that is what I would have done, because JAB is going to play.
As they say, JAB must play. Yes?
JAB must play.
All right, panel, thank you so much. Dr.
Can I have just a closing word? Yes,
quickly, because we have to get to the next segment.
I just would like to say to four, first of all, the panelists here, that I myself was engaged with entertainment people, albeit not on a couple of occasions, many weeks ago, and we spoke at length, and I spoke in detail about the necessity for vaccination at that point. I recognize it was not an easy pill it wasn't an easy pill for them to swallow, but now they're seeing, hopefully people are starting to see the importance of vaccination. Vaccination, it allows people, you have less less chance of 4 out of every 1,000 people will get very sick if they're vaccinated, and less than 1 in 1,000 will die if they're vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, your risks are much higher of getting either of these things. Also, to say to folk, the question about Carnival and JAB is not in any attempt. And I say, and as a matter of fact, in 2 hours' time or so, the committee will be meeting. We've been having to meet constantly for weeks now, months, and we'll be meeting. And there's never been an attempt to try to restrict people's freedoms. But what we have to recognize is that any mass gathering people are going to be particularly at risk. So I have to say to people, avoid mass gatherings of any nature. And at any level of society.
So, Dr. Bradford, I think that is the operative word. Avoid mass gatherings at any cost. The operative word there. And I think there has been. Let me finish, please, Dr. Bradford. I think there has been sort of a double standard in that respect.
No. We have said if you're vaccinated in a controlled environment, this is what we'll be aiming to. Even that. Today, I'll be calling on committee members who we're going to have to relook that on the basis of the new evidence that has come out. Even that. So this thing is a very dynamic action at play. None of us wish to have that virus around, but we just have to act within it to try to save lives and save the economy and save people's well-being too. Because on the one hand, we are talking about for distressing, and that is important. But when country is swept by the virus and people can't work and people are out of job, that is even a worse situation. I submit.
Okay, all right. Dr. Brathwaite, Dr. Crawford, Jab Moses, thank you all so very much for appearing on the Bubb Report. And I have Mrs. Faye Thompson. Thank you so much, Mrs. Thompson, for staying in wait, for being so patient with us. It's now afternoon, but we will get to a conversation on the launch of the Grenada Movement for our next segment. Dr. Brathwaite, Dr. Crawford, and Jab Moses, thank you again. I am on island, so perhaps I may run into either of you three folks if we do. Yes.
Not at a big fete. You won't run into me at a big fete. That's for sure.
Not at a big fete.
But I think the committee should head the jab bad, and show us the orderly way to do it, maintain the distance, Prime Minister in front, Minister of Health second, followed by the committee. Just throwing it out. Just
okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, folks. All right.
Mr. Bubb, I hope we can have a continued conversation, because yes, we did discuss We did have a really good discussion today. But that point that Mr. Brathwaite was just making about the economical impact of COVID-19 from since 2020, there's a lot of things that I would have liked to talk about, but I guess as much we can't do it today.
Certainly, yes,
So,
yes. But we will be having, and this is the point of the Bubb Report, to delve beyond superficial conversations and to bring the experts, to bring people with lived experiences together so that we can have much more substantive and much more nuanced discussions on the news events of the week. So again, Jab Moses, you're more than always welcome to appear. Dr. Brathwaite as well. The government has an open platform here as well to always talk about what your governance agenda is, especially given that we are in this COVID period as well. Okay, so folks, stand by. Let us get to Faye Thompson next. We will take a quick break and we will be right back. Since losing that seat, what have you been up to?
Now, Mr. Attorney General, this particular provision sounds unconstitutional, but why were there not consultations before moving forward with the proposals? Did they say what will happen when you guys get to St. Vincent? Because there are pressing socio-economic issues that I would want to address with you.
In the hyper-information age of social media, the Bubb Report knows there is more to the story. We have questions and demand answers. We strive to hold the powerful accountable and tell an unbiased, contextual story. You know what happened. We let you know why it happened. There is always more to the story. The Bubb Report, streaming every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube. And welcome back, folks. We have joining us here a member of the Grenada Movement, Mrs. Faye Thompson. Mrs. Faye Thompson, welcome to the Bubb Report. I know that this is a busy period for you and for your members as you are gearing up to have your launch tomorrow at the Spice Basket in Bolio St. George. So we certainly thank you for taking this time to appear on the report. But Mrs. Thompson, I want to begin from last year. We're gonna peel off some historical layers last year. Now, Dr. Entwine, when he appeared on the Bubb Report last year, he made the point that the TGM was first constituted as an NGO, and that the NGOs will be fulfilling the NGO as the TGM will be fulfilling a particular need. So I'm just going to play that clip and get you to respond just to what Dr. Entwine said then.
But to what extent would the non-governmental constructs in which you are operating in would be effective for you to be able to accomplish those prescriptive measures that you talk about?
And so we believe that what needs to be done first is to bring all the parties together without prejudice to political, allegiance is the word. We believe that it's not just the political parties, it's the Evangelical Association, it's the other NGOs, it's civil society, it's the youth, it's farmers. We believe that that is what will take us as a country forward. And we believe that that can best be done by an institution such as the TGM that wants to form a common agenda without prejudice to either the Green Party or the Yellow Party. What happens later is another question.
Okay, Mrs. Thompson, and we got Dr. Entwine and we got into a spirited discussion after this. But the question is, what changed from a year ago that you are now a political organization when Dr. Entwine said last year that there would be no regard for partisan politics? You need to unmute the mic. Sorry. Yeah. Do you see? There you go. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
What changed, I would say, is the passion of the people. The people drove the agenda in the sense that we know that NGOs have always existed of various ilks, right? But we also know that the policy space for NGOs to effect the issues that they really want to get implemented is not there. NGOs have basically been maneuvered out of that management space. And so it is that, given all that is happening in our country, the fact that people are clamoring for something different, clamoring for relief, clamoring for an entity that could drive this country, take us from the brink. And so, you know, you had to listen to the call. And then there were those within that felt that we will be wallowing in the wilderness, trying to effect change by asking, advocating with government. And if we really want to see change, we have to be able to make legislation. And so I think, given the space that was provided, it just had to be done. Especially when you look.
Go ahead.
Especially when you look at what happens with the political parties over the past 2 cycles of elections. The voter turnout and the voters who just will not turn out. It means that they are not satisfied. And so in good conscience, you couldn't sit, hear it, and do nothing about it. And then the other thing is, having heard the call, it was not proper to say that you're continuing as an NGO, because then you would have been branded as being dishonest. So you had to transition.
Well, and I think that's a concern, because people felt as if you were not transparent from the get-go with respect to what your innate intentions were with respect to moving from an NGO to a political party.
But the intentions were always honorable. If you see better and you know better, then you do better. And look at all the NGOs that have been crying out for environmental change, crying out for social change. What is the space that they've had to really effect change? And so looking at the political dynamic, and that is where you know you will get the action. That is where you know you can implement change. And so the call from the bottom pushed the TGM to the point where you had to go the political route. And in order to go to the political route, you have to transition into a political party. And that is what is happening on Emancipation Weekend.
Yes. So tell us, your launch tomorrow, what happens after that? I know that you've had several virtual events. You've been engaging with a lot of virtual forums and things like that. What does your ground game look like? And maybe I'm jumping the gun, but what would your ground game look like following tomorrow's launch?
Okay, well, you are jumping the gun, but tomorrow signifies the break, the winding up of the NGO, and heralds in the birth of the political party. And so every political party is governed by a constitution. And so the constitution would have to be observed. And by that, we are talking about the organizational work that must happen before you can talk about where I know you want to go, right? That organizational work begins.
So that's just the starting point. So you're saying that
it's the starting point.
It's the starting point. Okay. And let's see here. So now you made a point about the electorate and the fact that the Grenadian electorate does not really turn out to vote. I don't know if that's what you're trying to imply, but do you think that with the TGM's presence and on the political scene, that it would somehow splinter the vote? I'm going to play another clip here from Tobias Clement and Tillman Thomas. They're not necessarily natural political allies, but this is what they said about forming alliances in order to be able to compete against the behemoth and the machine that is the new National Party. I'm going to play that and get you to respond.
I will have to call on all opposition forces to unite and come together for the good and for the benefit of our country. One, as an independent candidate, I have never seen an independent candidate in Grenada political history making any inroads. The closest that came was in 1995, Elvin G. Nimrod. May God have mercy on his soul. But then after that now, I mean, take back from the 1970s, where you had the juggernaut, the GOLP, and still, when you had unity there, it was very difficult to defeat Gary. But in order to make any dent in the future political landscape of Grenada, myself, whosoever else is out there, must come together. I do not know what umbrella or how it, but we must come together to bring it together, to gel it together, so that if we have division in the opposition, the chances will be very narrow.
Can you work with Dr. Patrick Antoine? He is about to launch a TGM. Any unity talk that takes place in the country will most likely include him and his organization. Can you work with Dr. Antoine?
I'm always willing to work with anybody who is committed to the welfare and well-being of Grenada. It could, again, when Peter David and Nazim Buchanan came into the party, there were NDC supporters who were so strongly opposed to them that some of them resigned. I mean, they're still my friends, but that did not deter me and others from embracing and bringing them into the party, because what we're saying, once you're going to go along with what the party stands for, you're welcome and we can work together. So I'm willing to work with anybody who is transparent, who is democratic, and who is willing to manage the resources for the benefit of the people of Grenada.
Mrs. Daniel, I want you to respond. I mean, go ahead.
Faye is fine. You wouldn't go wrong with Faye. Not
Faye.
Daniel.
Okay, all right. Faye, all right. It's all right, Faye. Yeah, sorry, Faye.
Well, I share the viewpoint of Mr. Thomas, but coming together has to be behind an agenda. So we're going to cross that bridge when we meet it. TGM is a unity party. TGM is open to all who share some of the same values that Mr. Thomas spoke about. Nobody wants to splinter votes, but this is not the time. The TGM is launching. We are offering those 20,000 people who did not vote an option. We cross the bridge when we meet it, but this is about TGM launching. Grenada has on its books about 30 political parties. I've never heard a hue or cry about any other party that came on the scene. Give TGM the chance on this Emancipation weekend to just breathe and to be and to say to the nation, we are here. This is the agenda that we will be working on. If you like it, we are open to all. The doors are wide open. Welcome. We cross the bridge with where you're going, Kellon, when we get there. Tell me.
Is there an underlying political ideology of the TGM that is different from, say, the NDC's political ideology or the GULP's political ideology or the ruling party's political ideology? What is
or
your
the NNP's
underlying
ideology?
Correct, yes.
So it's not about ideology. It's about who can ignite the theme of the launch, who can ignite that hope in people, that they would understand that you have a role to participate in your democracy. You have a role to play in coming out to vote. 20,000 people did not vote. 2 parties contested the election, but 20,000 did not vote. What does that say? And we have a youthful population, Kellon, who are apolitical. And when we engage with them, we understand what they're saying. They're saying, not interested in politics. But when you discuss and you dialogue, they understand that politics is important. The very clothes you wear, the VAT you pay, how it is spent back on society. That is politics. And so to ignite them to come with their ideas, to flesh out an agenda that we can all agree on, everybody agree on, to ignite those who sat on the fence. 15-0 on 3 occasions. Let's not talk about splintering.
Okay, all right, let's get to some comments. Nicole Brenda Johnson James says, we get that, but what is the ideology? I think you tried to answer that. Corporal, go ahead, please. Yes,
it's basically a government of the people, for the people, by the people. It's no different to any other ideology.
All right. Why haven't the TGM been critical of the ruling NNP? It's another comment.
Well, we haven't been critical of anybody. We are just going about our daily business, trying to flesh out our agenda, trying to position ourselves for the transition that we are undertaking.
Right.
So,
okay.
and you know, if people are looking to TGM for nasty politics, we have heard from the people. Don't tell me what anybody did. Tell me what you are going to do that's going to make my life better. And we are taking that on board. Listen, we've been getting sniper fire and we have not even launched. Right?
Oh, you have been?
So
from whom? From which quarters?
All over. You see it
okay.
and you hear it. You see it and you hear it too, Kellogg, right? So,
yes.
So we know that this is not going to be a walk in the park. But at the same time, we honestly believe that as a democratic society, you have to give people a chance to exercise their will. And this is what sufficient of us have agreed upon that we want to do. And we want to do it because we want to offer those who have not been engaged, we want to offer them an option. And if they embrace the option, we're happy because the agenda is not going to be our agenda. It's going to be their agenda. We are building that agenda, Kellogg, based on the ideas that people in community, people in associations are bringing to the fore. And in many instances, it coincides with the thinking that many of us had. So it's a nice union. And we are just riding that wave. Just allow us a little freedom to do that. Okay. And let us establish the organization.
Yes, all right. Leo Lenny Edwards is saying, it is not unusual for an NGO to transition into a political party, as it is not uncommon for grassroots organizing to transition into more established presence, such as the Black Lives Matter movement. Then we have another comment from Mr. Brian Grimes, who says, the only issue I have with the TGM is that they have been soft on issues. However, in a democracy, the people should welcome viable choices. And in the marketplace of ideas, it is always important to have those viable choices as well. This is, after all, a parliamentary democracy. Another comment here, Jonathan Granger is saying, different side of the same coin. Nobody's talking about establishing new systems because this system don't work. The experiment is over. Let's do something new. Let's see, some other comments are coming in. Stephen McDonald saying, we are fed up with the opportunistic nature of those in politics. That's why we are refusing to vote. So that's some feedback your organization might have to take on board there as well. Yep. Yeah, I think John Alexander is saying TGM equals starting off on the wrong foot. Deceit is deceit. If it walks like a duck. All right. So those are some of the comments. And Faye, I'm just going to give you an opportunity for some closing comments. You've spoken extensively of what people can expect tomorrow, but starting time, who are the speakers? Do you have any surprises? Tell us more.
Come up to Spice Basket. The launch is going to be exciting. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be message. It's going to be, you know, just a total package on Emancipation Day. We're going to celebrate our culture. It starts the doors will be open from 3 p.m. It starts at 5. It's going to be streamed as well. So people can, because, you know, we have linkages in the diaspora as well. And so we don't want to leave anybody out. We specifically asking Carriacou to stay tuned because of all, you know, the dynamics, they have not been able to be fully engaged in this launch. But they're going to get this. They're going to get this.
Okay. All right. Faye, again, please give my regard to Dr. Antoine. He's always welcome. He's my good sparring partner. So
he can spar with anyone. By
excellence. Yes. Again, all the very best on your launch, and we will be watching this TGM space. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. That was Faye Thompson of the Grenada Movement. And I want to, again, take this opportunity to wish all of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique a happy Emancipation weekend. And I also want to take this opportunity to wish all of us a happy Carnival season for 2021. It is very good to be home, and you will be seeing me throughout the island as I will be making the rounds to visit a few folks. Again, on behalf of the entire team at the Bubb Report, we thank you for tuning in for another week, and we will see you next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye.